Hi there and welcome to your Wilderness Therapy. My name's Dan and today I'm going to talk to you about anxiety in social and work situations. This follows from a comment that someone made in the YouTube channel on my other video about anxiety, which is a bit more general in terms of the things you can do to help prevent it. So I strongly advise you to watch that video first and then come back to this one. I want to thank the person who left that comment as well, because that encouraged me to make this video that is hopefully helpful to other people who experience issues in those situations. The first thing on the list is don't overthink this. Now, some people might roll their eyes at that because they'll be saying, Dan, if it was that easy, if I could just stop thinking about these things, then I wouldn't have anxiety in the first place. But what I'm trying to say to you is that you need to recognize that those feelings 99.9% of the time are attached to an assumption that something will happen when it won't. And something that one of my friends often says that is so true and so powerful is thoughts aren't facts. If we attach feelings to all of our thoughts, you're attaching feelings to something that doesn't truly exist in reality, in the physical reality. It just exists in your mind. And once you realize that the logic behind that, you can try and discriminate between what is a genuine thought, what is a genuine threat, and what is an actual fact. So just remember that our brains are hardwired to look for threats. We have a negativity bias in our outlook on the world. It's what kept us alive back in the day, and it's allowed us to get to this point in our evolution. But we're confused these days. We're starting to think that a presentation at work is a threat to us. We start to think that a social situation, meeting friends in the pub or going to a wedding, for example, where there's going to be lots of people there, we start to convince ourselves that this is a threat. It's a life and death situation, whereas we know it's not. So don't overthink it. Break it down logically and remind yourself of those facts. It's just a thought. Don't attach a feeling to a thought. Second on the list is think of the worst case scenario. The worst case scenario in any situation is death. We're all going to die at some point, so there's no point worrying about it. It's one absolute certainty in this life. And I know that sounds quite morbid, but it's true. And sometimes it helps putting things in perspective. I used to get anxious when I was doing presentations, when I worked in sales. And part of the reason for that was I wasn't invested in what I was talking about. I didn't really care for it. And therefore, it wasn't coming from my heart. But the other reason was because I wasn't sure that what I was saying was going to be convincing to the audience. But one thing I used to do is I'd say to myself, come on, Dan, what is the worst thing that could happen here? You walk into that room and the boss stands up and shoots you in the face. I know it sounds drastic and it's quite a crude analogy, but it really helped me think, well, hang on a minute, that's not going to happen, is it? Well, very unlikely that's going to happen. So anything other than getting shot in the face is a bonus. So it helps to decrease the magnitude of the actual event and it puts things in perspective. And that's really what you need right now, just to get some perspective on this, because most of the time the things we worry about aren't worth the worry that you're investing in it. Number 3 on the list is to prepare. Now, I know this is really obvious. If you're going to do a presentation for work in particular, this applies more to the work situation than it does to a social situation, although you can prepare for both. But when it comes to a work presentation, obviously, the more you prepare, the more confident you're going to be, the more knowledge you're going to have on the topic you're going to be talking about, and therefore, the better you're going to be able to deal with the responses in the room and handle the questions and what have you. So therefore, you're creating that predictability within the presentation. And like I said in the previous video, having that predictable framework allows you to offset the unexpected and therefore minimizes the anxiety. What you can do is always write down the structure to your presentation and work backwards and analyze, for example, what questions are they going to ask you at the end of the presentation, so you can prepare your answers and you start having solutions for the things that are the major concerns for you. In the middle of the presentation, what are you worried about? Are you worried about people looking at you, what they're thinking? And one of the ways around this is to look at everybody in the room as you go into the room. And this is very good for social situations. Say you're walking into a busy pub and you're worried about the crowd of people in there, what they're going to think. look at each person as you go in. Just have a good look around, have a little scan. You don't have to stare them down. You don't walk in going, who's having it? But just have a look at each person. Most people will look at you because they're looking to see whether you're a threat as well. And the minute they identify you're just another person going in there for a drink or to socialise, they'll look back down or get back on with what they're doing. And that applies in the boardroom as well. If you're doing a presentation, just look everybody in the eye. That body language is quite powerful. It shows that your confidence in yourself and you're kind of owning the stage, as it were. And the other thing you can do is during the presentation, think of ways that you can engage the audience, because that builds a connection between you and them, and it also shares the load of the presentation. You feel that connection. They're in it with you, and they feel like they're part of your presentation too. And that really helps. It helps them and it helps you. It sort of passes on a bit of the pressure to everybody else in the room, and it helps sort of dissolve it a little bit. So that's something you can do in the moment. And then think to how it starts. How does the presentation look when you walk into that room? Are you worried about the initial moment of walking through the door, the initial introduction, standing there in front of everybody? You can recreate this at home. You can go through the presentation at home, talking to the camera. These days we've got our phones, we can record it and keep practicing it over again. Walking through the door, imagine what you're wearing, imagine how you're going to stand, with your head up high and your shoulders back. That gives that air of confidence. And remember, your brain and body believe what you tell it. So if you tell it that you're standing tall and you're confident, your body and your brain will believe it. So that practice gives you that familiarity, and then you can transition that into the workplace, and that's quite comforting because you're reminded of the fact you've done this before at home, and then home is more comfortable than it is at work, and therefore the two start to merge together a little bit, and it can be really helpful. The next thing on the list is have zero expectations. Now, this sounds quite negative, but I apply this theory to a lot of different things in my life, because as soon as you have an expectation on something, you attach emotions and feelings to the outcome, and therefore you can be disappointed. Whereas if you don't have any expectations, there's no chance of you being disappointed. How does this factor into anxiety? Well, if you think about it, expectations form the conduit between the now and the future event that you're worried about. Cut the expectations and you remove the fear of the outcome, because there's no longer any connection with your emotions from now until then. I know it sounds really quite straightforward, but if you imagine visualizing, I have no expectations of this presentation other than I'm going to give it my best, then you're no longer investing any emotions into the future, and therefore you're not going to have any anxiety associated with that in the future. So it helps nullify the threat, because you're just literally cutting the connection from now until the outcome. So hopefully this visual representation will make it a little bit clearer. As you can see, here we are on the left hand side. The only thing that is truly real is now, the present moment. You're happy, you're content, because you're not worried about the past, you're not worried about the future. However, the minute you invite expectations into your life, you are suddenly emotionally attached to a future event. The future event is where all your anxiety, your fear, and your worry exist. This is an outcome that may never happen. So by removing the expectations, you are cutting that emotional cord to your anxiety, your fears, your worries. So here we go. Let's just cut this now. And all of a sudden, all you're left with is the now. And like I said to you before, that's the only thing that's real. So this is where the happiness is at. This no longer exists because you've cut the expectations that join the now to the future event. So we can just screw that up and that can go away. I hope that makes sense. Makes sense in my head, but if you're still struggling to understand that in the comments, then please let me know. Next thing on the list is you are not that important. This sounds like I'm beating on you here, but I'm not. Everyone should be aware of this. The correct evolution through life is a spiritual evolution where you realize that ego can be used for the good and it can be to our detriment. So it's knowing when to ditch the ego. And this is a good time to ditch the ego, because you need the confidence to perform a presentation and be yourself in a social situation or in a work situation. But everyone is so consumed with themselves that they're not bothered about you. And that's a really harsh but really valuable lesson to learn, because you might walk into a room and think everyone's thinking about me, everyone's looking at me, everyone's saying this about me, saying that about me. They're really not. People are too wrapped up in their own lives. They've got their own issues, they've got their own insecurities, their own lack of confidence, and their own anxieties to be worried about yours. So even when you're doing a presentation, a lot of people in that room, although they'll be engaged in what you're saying, I'm sure it'll be a great presentation, their head will be drifting off and they'll be thinking about other stuff in their own lives, because everyone's got their own stuff going on. And that same applies in a social situation. I'll use the pub analogy again. You walk into the pub, people are looking at you, you're worried what they're thinking about you. They're not. They're just thinking, who's that person who's walked into the pub? Oh, it's just another person who's walked into the pub. Back to what I was doing. They're not going to waste any more thoughts on it. And I got a valuable lesson in this when I was younger. And, I was probably a young teenager, maybe 12, 13, something like that. And I'd gone to meet some friends there at someone else's house, and they were playing some game in the garage. And it just wasn't my thing. So I was like, oh, I'm just going to go off on my bike and climb some trees or do whatever I was going to be doing. And for some reason, as I went to go away and I closed the garage door, I thought, oh, I'll go up against the garage door and listen to what they say about me. Because you're egocentric as a teenager. You think the world revolves around you. So you want to know what people are saying, or you imagine the world stops when you're not there. So I put my ear to the garage door. Guess what they said? Absolutely nothing. And I've never actually told my friends this, but they just carried on talking about the game and talking amongst themselves, because I'm not that important. And that was a really valuable lesson. And from that day forward, I've never left a room thinking, I wonder what they're saying about me. They're probably not saying anything about you. And if they're saying something negative about you, they're not your people. So why would you worry about the opinions of people who aren't your people? That's just, it's really helpful, I think, because in these situations, like at work and in social situations, a lot of the anxiety comes from the fear of judgment and what people are thinking about you. But as soon as you realize that most of the time people are too busy thinking about themselves, it really helps offset that. Next thing on the list is try to think about a little point beyond the moment that you're worried about. So this time tomorrow, all of this will be over. Say it's the evening, it's Monday evening, you've got your presentation at work on Tuesday morning. Think about the fact that on Tuesday evening, you'll be back home where you are right now, and everything will be fine. Regardless of what's going on at work, you'll still be here, you'll still be alive. So I would suggest you focus on a very indiscriminate event, something that is non-anxiety inducing, like what you're going to have for dinner tomorrow night, or what you're going to do tomorrow night. You're going to take the dog for a walk, you're going to go to the gym, what you're going to watch on TV. These very small things that are comforting and rewarding. So say you got your presentation tomorrow, once you've got that out of the way, you can just focus on, oh, I'm going to cook myself a nice steak for dinner, or I was going to go for a nice run, I was going to go for a long walk with the dog, I was going to watch this series on Netflix. That's my like reward. And you can focus on that reward and you can focus on that goal. And that's like the next thing you can look forward to. And by looking forward to, remember what I said, by looking forward to something, that gives you something to be grateful for. And gratitude is the antidote to this fear. So once again, looking forward to something, creating that level of optimism really offsets that anxiety that you're feeling. Now, before I end this video, I just want to remind you that, like a lot of things I've said, it comes from a fear of what other people are thinking about you. But remember, those people who criticize you or judge you negatively or say bad things about you are projecting their own issues onto the world. That's on them. That's not on you. That's not your responsibility, how other people react and how other people feel. All you can ever do is give things your best shot and just be true to yourself. No one can ask any more of you from that. And we're all going to make mistakes. You can't strive, you can strive for perfection, but you'll never be perfect, and that's fine. There's plenty of mistakes I've made just doing this video. I'll probably look back over it and say, oh, why did I err there? Why did I say that like that? But that's just human nature. None of us are perfect, and that's a good thing, because if we were all perfect, we'd just be robotic and there'd be nothing interesting in our interactions. But you can strive for perfection, but don't be too hard on yourself, because you're going to make mistakes in your presentation. Like I say, nothing is perfect in this world. And sometimes in a social situation, you might say things that you regret, but we just move on. Everything that we do that is challenging is a stepping stone to further growth and our evolution as a human being. So all the challenges allow us to learn more about ourselves and allow us to become better at what we do. So embrace those challenges because they're good for us. We need them. And remember that anxiety is a natural emotion and it's got us to where we are today. If you feel anxiety, it means that you're a healthy individual. So it's a good thing that you're going through that. But I appreciate you watching this video and I really do hope it's helped you because, you know, like I said, someone had mentioned this in the comments, which made me go off on a bit of a tangent to a few more specific things you can do to help with your anxiety. And if there's anything else that you're worried about or thinking about, please leave a comment and I'll make a video about it if I think it can help other people. So once again, thanks for watching. I hope this resonates with you. And please click the like and subscribe button. That'll encourage me to make more videos like this. Just remember, whatever it is you're going through is temporary. This will pass. You've got this and I've got you. Thanks for watching.